Welcome in to another edition of the Patriots Draft Podcast. Today's going to be a little bit of a different one. Not a ton of hot topics for the Patriots this offseason currently, but we still do have a few things to talk about between the coaching staff, the NFL schedule that came out. We made a video on that, but we have a couple more things to touch on with that, and some of the roster stuff. We got Vince Wilfork being inducted to the Patriots Hall of Fame, so we got a few things we'll talk about. So I'm here with my co-host Jace Campbell. How's it going, Jace?
Yeah, it's going good. This is the weird time of the NFL where we were so busy with draft talk, free agency, offseason. Now we're getting into kind of a slow period while teams are getting the rookies in there, into rookie mini camp and all those things that they have coming up. So hopefully content picks up again, like we said, once OTAs get in there, um, camp and everything is officially underway. We'll have more stuff to talk about, but there's still some interesting stuff coming out on the coaching staff. But before we get into that, let's kind of hit on this schedule that we talked about just a little bit more. Cole has an interesting stat here that he had, and this is 2 years in a row now. Buffalo has a 13 or a plus 13 rest day differential, which is the best in the NFL. The Patriots are tied for the second worst with a negative 10 day rest. Cole, I'll let you kind of explain that a little bit more on how that works and why that's so in favor for Buffalo and so bad for the Patriots.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, obviously in the NFL, every day of rest, every day of preparation counts. So every team you start off with 0, and the opponent you face that week, if you have the same amount of rest days as they do, so say each team has 6 days in between games, that's 0. But if you have 7 days of rest compared to their 6 days, that's a +1 rest day differential for you and a -1 for them. So overall, throughout the entirety of the season, Buffalo has a +13, which is almost 2 weeks extra of rest than their opponents throughout the season, which is, like you said, the best in the NFL. So they're compared to their best in the NFL of +13 and our -10. They got 23 days extra rest than the Patriots do, um, facing their opponents on average here. So that's not great. The Patriots have kind of been screwed a little bit once again with the rest days, and we saw it last year. They hit their stride at certain points, but they had their struggles. Their bye week was super late, and it was tough for them to get there and get there healthy. So the Bills having more rest and more preparation than their opponents pretty much every week of the season. That's a huge advantage. That's a huge advantage in the NFL when the games are so close and it can come down to one player who's healthy who wouldn't have played, but he has an extra day and he's performing better. It's huge. And the Bills they got the good end of the stick here, and the Patriots did not. So that's an advantage, that another thing they'll have to overcome trying to win this division. But hey, if the Patriots come out and win this division over Buffalo somehow, with the odds stacked against them, that's going to make it even sweeter. So you could look at it as, oh, boo-hoo, it stinks, which it does, but at the same time, it's a challenge. It's another thing for this Patriots team to overcome, and if they do, it's going to make them a better team, stronger team, and hopefully prepare them better for the playoffs.
Yeah, and looking at it right away, I think that most of that negative 10 for the Patriots is going to be that week 14 matchup against the Cardinals. They're coming off of a bye, so week 13 they're on bye. Week 14 they play New England Monday Night Football. So that right there, because New England will be coming off of a Sunday night game against the Bills. So they will be, I think most of that's going to be there. That's probably a 7 differential right there for them. And then we talked about this when we play a couple of the other games on Thursday nights and stuff, short weeks, or the Sunday night one. I think that there were a couple teams other than that. So yeah, it sucks. And the other thing that we need to look into, and we're not like too tied into right now, but I know New England has a pretty favorable travel schedule. They don't have to travel too far. They're not playing an international game, so that probably shouldn't tie in too much. But I'm looking at it, the weeks 14, 15, like I just mentioned, where they play Arizona in Arizona on Monday night, then they play in Vegas on Sunday night. They probably stay on the West Coast for that, because for me, it doesn't make sense to fly back late or early Tuesday morning probably, and get the different time zones. They'll be 2 hours ahead once they land in the East Coast. Then they're going to have to leave probably on a Thursday, maybe Friday, get back on the West Coast. Then they don't want to be jet lagged. So for me, I think that's another tough part of the schedule, other than the differential in rest days, is the travel. And I think that that's the toughest one right there, where they could be staying out of their own beds. You don't see that very often in the NFL. You hear about it in the NBA where they play, 6-game road stretches and they're going from place to place. But in the NFL, with there only being one game a week, usually they're just going back home. They get to sleep in their beds for 4 or 5 days and practice there, have their own treatment at their own facility, and then go home. So it'll be interesting to see how New England handles that week 14-15 matchup with the Cardinals and the Raiders back to back on the West Coast. And if they do decide to stay there, which makes the most sense for me, and not come back, because that's only a six day differential in days when you're playing the Raiders and the Cardinals.
And I think you're right, because I saw a tweet somewhere that the Patriots requested that those games be back to back. So that would make all the sense in the world that they would just stay there, not have to travel. They'd be in one place at the same time, get to practice, hopefully at the same facilities, and like you said, all that stuff. So that would definitely be beneficial for them. So that would make sense. But I tried to look up the air miles. I couldn't find it. I'm pretty sure the Packers don't have great air miles either to go along with their not worst rest differential in the NFL this year. So they're kind of getting screwed. That's unfortunate for them. But overall, there's a ton of good games in the schedule. And yes, all these things do play a factor. But at the end of the day, the team that can overcome all this stuff and be resilient and make it to the playoffs, like I said, it's just going to make them stronger and increase their odds of going further in the playoffs because of the things that they overcame. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be hurt. You don't want to have a tougher schedule, but sometimes those tough challenges make you a better team and prepare you for the challenges that the playoffs bring.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the travel distances too. I have the team that travels the most in 2022 is the Seahawks. They travel almost 29,500 miles. They go through 34 different time zones now. What, they have an international game, don't they? I'm pretty sure Seattle does.
In London? Or
yeah, so
Germany? Did they play in Germany or London?
No, isn't Tampa Bay in Germany?
Who do they face, though? It could be the Seahawks, no?
NFL international games. I'll pull this up. But yeah, so New England does have a pretty favorable one in travel distance. They don't have to go out of the country. They don't have to do any of that. Seattle plays, they do play in Germany. They do play Tampa Bay in Germany. So that will be the Germany game. They have to travel there. New England doesn't have to. They played in Mexico a couple of years ago. Everyone thought that New England would be playing in Germany though this year. Everyone was like, this would make sense, right? There was a lot of rumors. Exactly. There's a ton of rumors. And once New England said they ain't keeping Jakob Johnson, they canceled it. That's the conspiracy right there. No, just kidding.
What's crazy is that the Seahawks, like you said, 34 time zones or whatever. The Steelers don't leave the Eastern time zone, or they don't leave whatever time zone it is at all the entire season, I think, which is crazy. I don't know how they pulled that off. That is, I don't think I've heard of that before. Getting to stay in your same time zone the entire season. That's pretty lucky for them. Do you want to touch on more coaching? Switch to the coaching, or touch on more of the schedule? We can get into this question in a minute, but I just wanted to pop it up from Light Shadows here.
Yeah, no, we're definitely getting into the coaching stuff, so might as well just jump into it. Light Shadows asks, do you have any indication who you would prefer to be the offensive play caller this year? Any potential candidates on the coaching staff? This is interesting. I don't know if you guys heard what Joe Judge said at his conference and what some of the other ones are. The tweet that I'm reading from Evan Lazar that has the estimated staff right here. So it has Joe Judge at quarterbacks, Vinny Cincinnati at running backs, Troy Brown, and what's Douglas's name? First name. I
can't remember either.
Let's see if I can find it on here. Can't find it. Anyways, so they have 2 receivers coaches, Nick Colley at tight ends, Patricia and Yates at O-line, DeMarcus Covington at D-line, Mayo inside linebackers, Steve Belichick outside linebackers. Cornerbacks is Mike Pellegrino, Brian Belichick's at safeties, and then Accord and Houston are the special teams guys. So that's what it's set in stone. If you guys listen to the interview with Joe Judge, it was interesting. And I feel like it was a lot of like smoke being said, because pretty much all he was saying was, hey, everyone needs to work with everyone. Pretty much if Patricia's doing a drill and Mac Jones is throwing the ball and he sees something, I want him to, teach him, which in essence, I get that. I think all coaches should be able to teach the scheme. I don't think they should be able to teach position specifics. That's a tongue twister right there. I think Mac needs a true quarterback guru, and Joe Judge had time on the offensive side of the ball. He was a wide receivers coach. I think maybe he's the best one, and that would probably be my pick for just handing over the play calling to, even though I don't know if I feel comfortable with him. That would be the clear cut for me. Because, Nick Cauley, Troy Brown, they don't have experience like that. I at least value Joe Judge's head coaching experience that he has. But I think it's a little concerning how they came out and said, like, oh, we want everyone to be able to teach Mac Jones and we want everyone to be able to teach the offensive line. I just thought it was such a weird dynamic that what Joe Judge was saying. And I don't know how it's going to be. I'm not going to overreact yet until we see it. But I think that is such a weird thing for Joe Judge to be saying right now. And if that's the dynamic they go into the season with, I definitely am going to be a little concerned.
You know what that says to me? They don't have a coach who's good enough to coach that certain position that can point out all these things. And they have to have a collective group try to come together and find problems with certain things. Like if you have a quarterbacks coach who is a good, trained professional NFL quarterbacks coach, he is going to watch Mac Jones and he's going to see whatever issue is there. And he can look at it from different angles. He works with them all day, every day, during practices, whatever. If he knows what he's doing and he's in the NFL and he's coaching at this level, he's going to be able to see that. So if Joe Judge is saying, hey, I need some of these offensive line coaches help to point out problems with Max, like throwing and his release and his footwork, and it's just like, okay, so to me, it sounds like you got no idea what you're doing. And are you probably a good coach? Yes. I mean, he was a great special teams coach. We know that already. That got him a head coaching gig. Was he great as a head coach? No. So I'm extremely concerned. There's also a report from, oh boy, I'm going to blank on the name. There's a report today that from Greg Bedard, there we go.
Yeah.
That the coaching staff situation is not starting out so great. Apparently the players haven't loved it so far. The coaching staff isn't loving it so far, just from his sources, whoever that is. I mean, take that with a grain of salt, but I wouldn't be surprised. Last year we saw it with the defense. When you got all these question marks, you don't have a true title at your position, guys are going to have questions about who they're supposed to go to. And when you're hearing different things from different coaches, that's not great. And this is one thing that we were extremely concerned about. We kind of swept it under the rug because we thought they'd eventually address it. They never did. Bill O'Brien would have been a great candidate for offensive coordinator. It made all the sense in the world. They never did it. So this is a little bit concerning. This is kind of where we're at now. We have no offensive coordinator. We got some of these special teams and defensive coaches transferring to the offensive side of the ball to try to coach Mac Jones in his second year. It's really unfortunate. And all you guys who wanted Josh McDaniels gone, this is what we got to deal with now. It's going to be Joe Judge probably calling the plays for the Patriots, or Matt Patricia, or a mix of both, or who knows. So it's not good. It's not good. And you can't just throw duct tape on this and hope it will work like Belichick's doing right now. Some of these decisions make no sense. Like he values somebody who's going to have experience in the system already, not even on the offensive side of the ball necessarily, but in the system of the Patriot way. He's going to value that over a guy like Bill O'Brien and ruining a relationship with Nick Saban, which I think if he asked permission, I guarantee Nick Saban would have been like, yeah, that's fine. Like whatever. It's a better opportunity for Bill O'Brien to be a head coach in the NFL sooner if he goes and takes this offensive coordinator job. So it's unfortunate the way this coaching staff is shaping up to look like, but I'm going to answer Light Shadow's question while also touching on Cody's here. I think Caley will be the OC, longest tenured offensive coach. So Nick Caley would probably be my pick, just because there's been a lot of intrigue and a lot of hype about him in the Patriot system, that he's got a creative mind. And I would love to see him get his opportunity to call plays throughout preseason, throughout the training camp, whatever it is, just to see what he's got, because I feel like we know what Joe Judge is as a coach, as an offensive head coach. We saw him with Daniel Jones, working with him sometimes, and the Giants, and that was not very pretty. We don't know what Caley is, and that gives you some hope, and also it's uncertainty because you don't know how he's going to do. He's never called plays as an offensive coordinator in the NFL before, but he certainly has some intrigue. He's currently been the tight ends coach for a little while now. I would be really intrigued to see what he's got up his sleeve. Bring a bright young mind, give him his opportunity. And if you're changing the system up, you're going away from the fullback, you got these new fast receivers, you're trying different stuff out. Why not give him a shot, see what he can do? If he stinks in training camp preseason, then fall back on Joe Judge or whoever your backup plan is. But I think Belichick is going to need to be involved in the offense this year more than he ever has, because the staff is not equipped to handle a well-oiled offense. Like this isn't setting up for success with the coaching staff that we currently have if Belichick does not have his hand heavily in the offense, which scares me too, because our defense, we have no starting caliber, like number one starting caliber corners. And the defense is going to need Belichick's attention as well. So I'm nervous. The coaching staff really scares me. This is a place we haven't been before. We went from having a bunch of good special team, defensive, offensive coaches. We had the best coaching staff in the league, and now we don't have Josh McDaniels. We lost a couple other guys, and this is kind of what we're getting stuck with. We're bringing back unsuccessful head coaches from different places and hoping they're going to work as position coaches here. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I'm certainly not super hopeful about it.
Yeah, I kind of hope that Bill brought back Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, obviously because they coached some of their best football here and they know the way that the Patriots want to be. But I hope that they brought those two back because I want Bill to focus on defense. We heard the rumors when New England supposedly gave over play calling to Steve or Gerard or whoever it was at the last half of the year. Supposedly that's who was calling it. The Patriots defense dropped. So I prefer Bill to stay on the defensive side. And now maybe you bring in two former head coaches, and yes, they were very unsuccessful as head coaches, but you let them kind of collaborate and take over the offense, which does not give me any confidence. But I agree with you. Is it Caley or Caley? Caley. Nick Caley, Troy Brown. I like them calling plays better than Joe Judge or Matt Patricia. But what I fear is that they don't have the experience. And that's you're never going to know if they can't call plays unless you give them it. So I agree. Let them call it in preseason. I feel like Bill is so regimented and he's never brought in an outside guy. That's what I wanted this offense to do is Bill O'Brien or someone that's been around the league that has different systems.
And because Bill O'Brien isn't even like he had experience here. You know what I mean? He had some experience here.
But at Bama, he was different, right? I feel like Caley and Troy Brown are going to be so similar to McDaniels because that's what they've been brought up under.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my concern is if you give these guys the play calls, yeah, they might have their own twist to it and they might not call screens every 3rd and 15, but I think that it's going to be a lot of the same stuff because that's just what they've been coached under. And do you really think Bill is going to give a first-time play caller full control of the offense? I don't. Maybe he does 10 weeks into the season, but I don't know. I think that this is the offensive side of the ball. Coaching definitely scares me. I don't know if there's a clear direction. I probably don't love Joe Judge, but I have to see what Caley and Brown could do as a play caller individually. I think they have the potential. They're obviously great position coaches, but running a whole offense and dealing with a second-year quarterback is totally different. It's just an interesting thing for me. I don't know how they're going to do it. That's why we were so intrigued by Bill O'Brien or bringing in someone that has experience calling plays, both NFL, college level, something like that, and is, a quarterback guru that has put guys successfully into the league or develop them into great quarterbacks. So yeah, the offensive side scares me more. That's why I don't want Bill to go to be bouncing back and forth offense to defense. I like what's his name? Greg
Bedard.
I always say like Berdand or something, but Greg Bedard, he also said the Patriots motto is do your job, right? And it sounds like with the coaching staff, they're not doing their job. They're saying, oh, you can do everyone's job. That's not what people were talking about Matt Judon, and he talked about, maybe getting a little bit too ahead of himself last year at the end of the year. He was worried about speeding up the game and not letting it come to him. You can't ask a receiver to run 2 routes. The whole point of doing your job is doing your job as good as you can perfectly and then trusting the other people. I feel like that's what the coaching staff isn't doing. I loved what Greg said, on his podcast today. I think that that's so fair to say because we don't see it. It's not like, hey, you're the quarterback's coach. You deal with Mac Jones. This is your guy. You're the offensive coordinator, whatever. There's no clear, route that the offensive staff is going in. I think the defensive staff's pretty set, but there was no major shakeups there. It was all on the offensive side with McDaniels and, the other guys leaving. So the offensive side of the ball, coaching definitely scares me a lot more.
Yeah, and that was the thing about having a guy like McDaniels was, so a head coach already has so much on his plate. Like, he doesn't have time to do all the head coach normal responsibilities, coach the defense, coach the offense, coach he's got a lot on his plate. So having a guy like Josh McDaniels, who was so good for so long, Belichick could check in, have a weekly meeting with Mac, with Tom, the quarterback, whoever, like he always has, do that, dip his toes in a little bit, but mostly focus on the defense side of the ball. And that's why our defense has been so elite, is because Josh has handled the offense. Belichick has obviously given his input, talk to the quarterbacks, all that stuff, but you can leave that for the most part and you can focus on defense, where Belichick is really the defensive minded genius who he is. Like, that's what he thrives at. So let him do that. But in this situation, we can't do that. Like, you lose Josh McDaniels, you don't only lose just a great offensive coordinator, but a guy who has so much experience in the system, a guy who has run this offense for what, 15 years, 10 to 15 years, somewhere in that range. And same with Belichick, but this is on the offensive, not the defense side of the ball. He has played the Bills a bunch. You can say, oh, this play from 2015 killed the Bills when they were playing this style of defense, or this coverage, or this and that, killed these players. Or from 2019, this is how we attacked them and this worked. This didn't work. So you can pull all that knowledge that you have of different ways to attack teams that scheme a certain way against you. And when you're a new coach, like if Nick Caley calls plays, he's going to have no experience with that. It's all going to be new. He's going to have film from what Josh did, and he can go off that a little bit. But when you're making in-game adjustments, you need to make them on the fly like that. You don't have time to go back and look at film from forever ago. You have to remember some of those things. And if McDaniels has a crucial 3rd and 7 call, and the Bills are playing a lot of zone coverage or what, cover 3, whatever, he can say, okay, this has worked a lot in the past against cover 3 defenses on 3rd and 7, whatever. And he can pull that out and adjust quickly to whatever they're scheming up versus you. And when you don't have experience in the playbook and in the system, just over and over again, every single year, when it's brand new to you, you don't have that knowledge. And it's a lot harder to react on the fly and create a good play, call a good play, and scheme up a good game when you don't really know. Like, one of the advantages is, hey, they don't know what Caley's going to call. They have no experience. They have no knowledge of what he is going to do. But at the same time, by the end of the season, they're going to know kind of generally how he coaches, how he calls plays, or how Joe Judge calls plays. And Joe Judge or Caley, especially Caley, because he'd be new, wouldn't have that same textbook of knowledge that McDaniels has had, where he can pull it out from games he's called. And that's what's scary about it, is it just feels like we don't have any trustworthy guy on the offense or defensive side of the ball if Belichick's not involved in both.
Yeah, and I like this comment. The Brian Hoyer part, I get. I think Brian Hoyer will be a great mentor. I don't know how much. Brian Hoyer was never a top level quarterback. I mean, he played solid snaps in the NFL, good amount, and he knows the game. That's what I like about Brian Hoyer. He knows the game. He's going to be a mentor to Mac Jones. I don't know if maybe he's enough, because he's never had that coaching role. If they're going to thrust him into a coaching role, then okay, yeah, that might be his future as a coach, because I don't think he's ever going to play quarterback anywhere else. But they are talking about a first-year coach that is going with a second-year quarterback that just came off a really good rookie year, and is he going to progress like New England wants him to? And then the other part of this is Bill. Yeah, I agree, but New England also hasn't had to develop a quarterback for 20 years. Like, we've been so blessed with Tom Brady, and how much of Tom Brady was really Bill Belichick? Like, I don't know. I mean, and even after 5 years of Brady, then they pretty much gave him the offense of the McDaniels, O'Brien, then McDaniels again. They've really only had 3 guys around Brady. So I don't know how much of Tom Brady we can even say was Bill too. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I do like the Brian Hoyer thing. I mean, I thought that his signing was more, like we mentioned, come back, be a mentor, let Mac Jones, learn from you, and, be able to pick your brain on scheme, preparation, continue to do that. So I agree that will help a lot more. But the other thing that I was going to say is,
Light Shadows is a fan of your film review here.
Thanks. That's the only content we have right now. We're freaking dry on content, so we'll try to get some more out. And then it was this one. You can't start as an offensive play caller in the NFL with 0 experience. Everyone starts
but
somewhere.
You always have 0 experience until you have experience, and that's the thing. Like, McDaniels at one point had no experience, and then he called plays, and look at where he ended up. So yes, and no at the same time. But go ahead.
No, I agree. But the thing that worries me is this year is so crucial for Mac Jones. So crucial. We do not want to see Mac Jones take a step back from his rookie year. And that's what worries me about a first-year play caller. I have no problem if we had Tom Brady giving a first-year play caller the reins. But with Mac Jones in his second year and the potential we saw last year, we can't screw this up. Can't screw it up. So that's what worries me. And then the other thing is you talk about, hey, maybe we do give Kaylee the play calls. Well, look at our first 6 weeks. Let's just say 6 weeks. Miami, Baltimore, Green Bay, Cleveland. I think all those are going to be really tough games. Pittsburgh's going to be depends on how Kenny Pickett is.
Pittsburgh is usually good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Same
and
with
it's
the
at
Ravens,
Pittsburgh.
Miami.
But
what I'm
saying is if we have a play caller and we're just getting used to him, the offense isn't flowing, and you start off 2-4, it's a steep climb, and the toughest part of our schedule is after the bye week. So yes, you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to start off the season 2-4. So I don't know. I would be fine giving a first-time play caller the reins, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. And we don't know until we see it, so we can't knock it. That's just my concerns with giving a first-time play caller the reins with a second-year quarterback, an offensive staff that sounds like they don't even have specific roles. There's so much that goes into being an offensive coordinator too. The headsets in the quarterback's ear cuts off at 15 seconds. So you got to get the call in 30 seconds. And that sounds easy, but you know how long NFL play calls are? Not to mention, by the time they get to the ball, they huddle up. Maybe there's 30 seconds on the play clock. So you have 15 seconds to get the call in. Mac Jones has to hear it clearly if they're on away games where he, maybe has to cover his ears or something. You have to speak clearly, precisely. So there's a lot that goes into calling plays. It's not just, hey, we're going to run double post. Like, we normal fans or analysts call things so simple. If you guys want to know how NFLs really call plays, go watch the video of Hard Knocks with the Raiders when Gruden was there. And who was it? He's now an analyst, but he can't even spit out the play call because there's 4 different numbers. There's all these different tongue twisters. It's almost like learning a foreign language for both the coach and the player. So there's a lot that goes into being a first-time play caller, and that's what worries me about having a second-year quarterback with all this potential. So,
those are all completely fair concerns. You know what I mean? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough, but at the same time, what are the other options right now? If Belichick's not willing to hire Bill O'Brien and bring that type of style back, which I think would be perfect, especially with the weapons we added in Devontae Parker and Tyquan Thornton, I think that kind of plays more to a style of offense that Bill O'Brien would enjoy coaching versus what you'd normally see from McDaniels. So that's kind of interesting. I think O'Brien still would have made so much sense here. Coaching staff is train wreck. Yeah. I'm not expecting to make the playoffs this year. I think it's a reload year and prep for next year. More money, develop young guys. Yeah. And that's what I think as well. I feel like it's more of a 9-8 season, not make the contend for a wild card spot, just fall short, and then you got 100 million in cap space next year to work with. I don't love that. I don't love wasting a year. Like, so what? Next year we're going to spend all 100 million, and then the year after we're not going to compete again. Like, this isn't what the Patriots do. They're a year in, year out. I mean, Robert Kraft said it. He 3 years without a playoff win, that's not acceptable for him, and that's not what we're used to as Patriots fans. So the Patriots need to find a way to compete consistently and not have these years where they spend a bunch and then have no money, spend a bunch, lose a bunch of guys, have no money. Like, we can't keep doing it back and forth. We got to structure things where you're taking advantage, like the Chargers are right now. They are stacking up on talent to try to win right now with Justin Herbert while he's on his rookie deal. And the Patriots are afraid to spend future money and they're not really trying to take advantage of Mac in year 2. They're kind of saying, all right, yeah, we are where we are. It's going to be what it is this year. And then maybe next year we'll add some pieces and try to compete for a Super Bowl again and see where we're at. But I just don't love it. There was a video that came out, I think today or yesterday, on Patriots Press Pass with Christian Fourier and I think Andrew Callahan maybe.
Yeah.
And they both said their biggest loser of this offseason was Mac Jones. And the reason for that is the coaching staff surrounding him. He's in a horrible position. He was in such a better position last year. Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels, this coaching staff. I mean, just so much knowledge, and he fit the system perfectly. Now there's so many question marks, and you don't know who's going to be coaching you. Josh McDaniels was basically your quarterback's coach. He was with Mac all day, every day, all the time. Anytime you see a picture of Mac Jones, McDaniels is standing right next to him, and that's how it was. He had a great mentor, a guy who's been doing it for a long time and having a ton of success, one of the brightest offensive minds in football. And now he's going to possibly a mixture of Joe Judge, Matt Patricia, and Nick Caley. Yeah, that sucks. That sucks.
The thing is, though, and Patriots fans wanted it. Patriots fans wanted McDaniels out.
And this is what you get. And this is what we were talking about. Like, it's not always greener on the other side. The grass isn't always greener.
Well, New England fans, we thought that you get rid of Josh McDaniels, it's automatic that Bill O'Brien comes in. And no one ever thought of what happens if he doesn't come in. Because as we found out, he's not coming in, guys. Like if he hasn't come in by now, he's not coming in. So yeah, it's not always greener. I get it. There were frustrations with Josh McDaniels, but I don't know if this was the year for him to leave and for us to feel comfortable with it. So yeah, the offense is definitely scary. I don't know. And you're gonna have to, if Matt continues to progress, you're gonna have to pay him money too. Like you mentioned, off of his rookie contract, you waste another year here, you spend all your money, you have another year, and then you're paying Mac Jones, and who knows if Bill's gonna still be willing or not willing to pay people at that point. What the draft process looks like. We both have came around on the draft class. It still wasn't a perfect draft class like the 2021 one, in my opinion, but I think that we can't grade it too early. I think that, Cole Strange is probably a day one starter. Tyquan Thornton could come in and make an impact. The Pierre Strong video, I love. The two corners probably will have some sort of role on this team this year. So, it's too early to judge that class. I think that, in retrospect right now, you're saying Bill didn't draft very well, but Bill went out and was very specific with who he drafted, who he targeted, and we'll see how it turns out. But coaching staff definitely getting, a lot. It's scary. And the thing that worries me is we all loved Joe Judge and Patricia when they were here the first time. Then they leave and everyone sees what they are as a head coach. And you said it, there's a lot on your plate as a head coach. Maybe they are just better assistant coaches. And I have no problem letting a defensive coach offense for a change of scenery, because you understand the defensive side. I mean, I think most coaches have dealt with both sides of the ball, and some are better on one side than the other. But Matt Patricia was a defensive coordinator for a really long time and a really good defense. He's going to understand how to coach things. I like him on the offensive side of the ball, where he can, coach up these guys on run schemes, how the defense is going to play it. I think that he brings a different perspective. But like he said, how is this going to translate to New England winning football games on the field? Just because they're a great coach doesn't mean that New England's going to, win all these football games. So it'll be interesting to see how it is come week one. And, maybe they get it nailed out through training camp. Maybe right now they're just toying with things and seeing how they like it to be. Because like you mentioned, this is rookie mini camp. This is voluntary workouts, like stage 2 of the NFL's offseason. When they get to stage 3, they get to camp. Maybe they tighten it down a little more, and, it's more specific for the coaches.
And this is going to be the year that we really find out. Like Cody says, he feels like Bill knows what he's doing as far as coaches go, which this year we're going to find out. This is really going to be a year where we're going to find out. It's odd to me, because I feel like last year their philosophy was uncharacteristically aggressive. They spent a bunch of money. They got some of these really talented players, got Matt Judon, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. Nelson Aguilar is, I guess what it is. I don't know how excited any of us were when that first happened, but Kendrick Bourne ended up being a really good signing. Jalen Mills has been a good signing. Godchaw was okay. But anyways, they spent all this money. Then they go in the draft. They get Mac Jones. They trade up for Christian Barmore. They get Ramondre Stevenson. They get Ronnie Perkins. They go with all this upside value. They spend money. They go for it. They had the number 1 seed in the AFC for a little while. Looked like they might be a team that could really make a run at it. Then they slowed down at the end of the year. Got bounced badly in the first round to the Bills. And it feels like this offseason, they're like, okay, we're just going to play it, not even safe, but just kind of like, we're just going to like ride the wave of just, all right, this is what it is. McDaniels, yep, you can go. We're going to draft these players that are widely considered reaches. This is what we're going to do at this position. We're going to draft a guard in the first round. We're going to draft a wide receiver with speed is one thing that was kind of surprising, like different. But it just feels like for the most part, they kind of said, all right, we're not going to spend a lot of money. We're going to pull Malcolm Butler out of retirement off his couch after we're going to call him up a week later after he gets off his couch. It's just a bunch of stuff that's just like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? And that's just what they've done with the coaching staff. They're kind of like, all right, we'll just bring this guy back. He's been here before. Oh, Patricia? Yeah. Joe Judge? All right. Yeah, he's been here before. It's just, this doesn't feel like a year that they're trying to win a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And it feels like that's what they should be doing every year, because that's what they've always done every year. like Carlos says here, they're playing it like a developmental year. They're not playing it like this is a year where they want to come out and compete and win a Super Bowl. And that stinks because I feel like we're trying to get excited for the season. We're trying to get all amped up for progress. Mac Jones in year 2, but he's just got a terrible situation around him as far as coaches go. But maybe Nick Caley has more than we expect. Maybe Joe Judge is some offensive minded genius that has just never shown it before. He's been hiding it all along just to come back to New England and pull it out for Mac Jones. But it feels like just kind of a meh. That's the kind of vibe of this Patriots offseason compared to last year, where it was money, great talent, consensus picks that are value picks, getting Barmer where you got him, getting Mac at 15, a bunch of steals, a bunch of day one contributors. And this draft, this offseason just feels like a couple steps backwards and just kind of saying, all right, we'll play this year. We'll play this year out, and then next year we'll go from there. And that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I do think that there were two things last season that kind of, I don't know what the word is, but maybe made Patriots fans a little bit get off track. I think that New England, once Brady left, looked at this and said, hey, this could be anywhere from a 3 to a 7-year rebuild. I think that New England going out and spending all that money last offseason was something we've never seen before. So we got our hopes up. Then New England goes on a legitimate winning streak before the bye, and there were legitimate Super Bowl talks with this team. And you're like, are you kidding me? Rookie quarterback, Bills back. I think those two things maybe are getting to Patriots' heads too much. This is year 2 of Mac Jones, guys. Look at the Browns. Look at some of these other teams. How long the Jets, the Bills, how long does it take to find a franchise quarterback? And New England feels like they have one. And I believe that we have one with our first try in Mac Jones, and he fell to us at 15. So I get it. It's frustrating. I agree here that we have a lot of picks next year. Right now, we have the 9th highest value draft class in 2022. So we have a first, a second, a third from Carolina, which will be an early third, hopefully. Right now, it's at 71, just off of projections. We'll get a comp pick for J.C. Jackson. So we have 4 picks in the top 3 rounds. Then we have 2 fourths, a 5th, and 2 6th, right? After the trades that we just made for some of the for Stidham.
And hopefully like Nikhil getting out of here too. We can maybe get something. And yeah.
So I think that they're still building to be done. Even if New England went out and killed this offseason, I don't know if they have what it would take to win a Super Bowl this year. So I still think they're in the rebuilding process. It's going to help to have a lot of picks next year. Hopefully that the picks we had this year turn out. We hit on more picks again next year. We use the money that we have next offseason to sign guys to contracts that will contribute. I still think this is year 2 of maybe a 3 to 4 year rebuild. And then you pay Mac and you see where it's at. But the thing that worries me is the development of Mac. That's what's worrying me. And that's why the coaching staff is such a problem for me. I get the personnel thing. I don't think New England's going to be a top 10 pick. I think that they're better than that. They have the players and they do play a tough schedule. But I think the lowest pick they have is 15, like they did with Mac Jones. I don't see them going too far under 500 this year. I think they're going to be right around there. And we'll get our schedule predictions out. But the thing that worries me, like I've mentioned before, and I probably sound like a broken record, but is the development of our guys, how we develop these young guys and how they look in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, because this is not a one and done thing for the Patriots. This year is not everything. This year is to develop guys, and it sucks to say that because I want to see them win and I want to see them in the playoffs. But I think that this still is, a year that we need to develop these young guys and build for the future, even though we don't have to tank like we're seeing the Texans or some of those guys. We can still be competitive, but we still got to be able to have these guys, come along and develop for the next couple of years.
Yeah, Ivan Fears has officially retired. I just wanted to answer that real quick. And yeah, I know what you mean, and I agree with you there. Like, if this year is a developmental year, we have a solid draft pick next year. We have a great draft class. We spend some of the money, but we set ourselves up for success for the next 5 years. I'll be okay with it. You know what I mean? One average year for a great next 5 years is okay with me. My only thing is, what I'm not okay with is using the next 2-3 years, wasting Mac Jones' rookie contract for developing guys and then having to pay him and not take advantage of any of that. Because the rookie contract, if you can get a starting or a franchise caliber quarterback on a rookie deal, that is the greatest advantage you can have in the NFL. We've seen it time and time again with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow last year. A lot of these guys, when you're on these cheap deals, you can surround them with talent. I mean, Joe Burrow had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, that tight end, CJ Uzama. There you go. I always forget how to pronounce it. Joe Mixon, his offensive line was garbage, obviously, but they've added to that this year where now they have a good offensive line and all those same weapons except the tight end. So it's a lot easier to win football games when you have a quarterback on a cheap deal, as opposed to a team like the Titans right now who are struggling to figure out what to do because they're paying Ryan Tannehill $40 million this year. That is absurd. That's no way. That's $40 million down the drain where you can draft a rookie quarterback. And if he can play at that same value for $6 to $10 million, you can spend that $30 to $35 million on AJ Brown, on whoever you want. You can get 2 starting caliber receivers, a corner, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, whatever you need. You can use that money elsewhere. And there's a set salary cap for a reason. So every $1 million counts. And when you got a guy on a rookie deal, you got to take advantage of that. You can't just waste years. So if you waste 1-2 years, like the first couple years, it is what it is. But those years, 3, 4, 5, you really have to take advantage of that. So if these guys develop, if they play the young linebackers, they see what they got, Cole Strange, Tyquan Thornton, some of these corners, maybe they're going to be replacing John Jones. Maybe that's why we're drafting some of these slot corners. Then it is what it is. And maybe it's a new generation of Patriots. And hopefully we can hit on the draft next year and continue to build for success long term. But I just don't want to waste Mac Jones' rookie deal because that's such a valuable thing in the NFL. And once it's done, if Mac's going to be our quarterback for the next 15 years, we're never going to have that same advantage again after his rookie deal is done.
Yeah, and I wanted to answer, well, this question right here, Light Shadow said, by the time Max signs his next contract, average salary for a middle of the road quarterback will be 30 plus million a year. Yeah, it's going to start getting up there. The other thing is
it kind of already is almost. I mean,
but salary cap will continue to grow too. I mean, the salary cap should not significantly, but if it goes up 2 or 3 million a year, that helps. So it's not just going to stay the same. And the NFL is not going to outprice themselves for players. But the other one I wanted to answer from Light Shadows, and then we'll get into more of these comments. How many of our draft picks do you think will be regular contributors this year? And who of the new guys do you have the most hope for? Honestly, with the way our roster looks right now, I think that Tyquan Thornton's going to have a role. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think he will have a role. Cole Strange, I fully expect him to start week 1 and all 17 games we play. I think that Jack Jones has a role. I think that Marcus Jones has a role. And I think that Pierre Strong has a little bit of a role too. Maybe not as much as I would like him to have, but I think that he's going to have a little bit of a role. I think that maybe the last 4 picks that we had are the ones that you don't see this year. What I'm more looking forward to, though, Cameron McGrone, Ronnie Perkins, Joshua Bledsoe, those guys last year that didn't play any snaps, that were hurt. They redshirted them this year. I look at those guys having more of an impact this year than some of those late round guys. But still, I want to see Tyquan Thornton on the field, his speed. I want to see how they use him. Obviously, Cole Strange, I think Jack Jones, we can get him rolling. And even if he struggles a little bit, get him out there. And Marcus Jones, if he's returning punts or if he's, playing behind Jonathan Jones for whenever New England moves on from him, I'm excited to see what both the second year or the rookies last year that didn't play can do. And then the first 3 draft picks that we had this year and Marcus Jones too.
I'd have to agree. Obviously, Cole Strange feels like the biggest slam dunk. Obviously, your first round pick, you better contribute year 1, especially if you're taking him there. So I'd say Cole Strange, yes. Tyquan Thornton concerns me a little bit just because we added Devontae Parker. We already have Nelson Aguilar. So if Aguilar is playing significant snaps, where is Tyquan going to play? Because they're kind of a similar style player. That's my only concern with that. So you would think a second round pick should play significant time. They usually do on most normal teams who draft well and pick these players for specific reasons. So he's kind of a question mark for me. I don't feel as confident in him playing significant snaps this year as I do as a guy like Cole Strange. And then, like you said, Marcus Jones, even if it's in special teams, returning punts, returning kicks, whatever he does, and then playing in the slot, I think he's going to mix in well there. Jack Jones, that'll be interesting. if they have him inside or outside, how much he plays outside. It's going to depend on the development of guys like Sean Wade, where he ends up playing, how he does. Jalen Mills, Malcolm Butler, what he's given us, and then Terrence Mitchell. Obviously, we got him, signed him from the Texans this offseason too. So it's going to kind of depend on how those guys rotate, like how that starting rotation is, and if any of these guys step up and overperform for what we expected them to. But Pierre Strong is a guy who, the more I think about it, the more I think he's going to have a role year one, just because of the James White injury. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So if James White doesn't play early on, I think a guy like Pierre Strong might have to step up behind Ramondre. I think Ramondre would probably take more of the passing snaps originally, but I think he's going to be right behind him learning. And I think he could have a bigger role than people realize. Kevin Harris is interesting. And then some of those linemen, D tackle, Sam Roberts, all those guys. I don't really see them contributing much year one, hopefully, unless one of them's great, like Mike Onwenu, unless one of the 6th round picks or whatever. That'd be nice. But I see them as being more depth pieces, and if one of them works out, that'd be great.
Yeah.
This is a good question right here, because we're talking about, if we get the 15th overall pick and we draft well, then that's going to set us up great. But it's hard to count on a draft pick. Say we get the 10th overall pick, Bill's probably going to trade back, probably going to draft an offensive lineman from Division 7, and I don't know. So it's hard to be hopeful about some things with this team. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but it's hard to get your hopes up, because we said this year. Even though we don't have money, if we just hit on the draft, we're going to be competitive this year. And then we have the draft that we have, and it's kind of like, okay, it is what it is. I mean, could be better, could be worse. Couldn't be much worse, I guess, in a lot of people's eyes. But I have a hard time counting on Belichick to draft well, to put this team together consistently, as opposed to like signing some guys in free agency. I feel more confident about that. Although that wasn't a home run either. Nelson Aguilar didn't fit well in this offense last year. Jonnu Smith didn't fit well in this offense last year. Devon Godchaux didn't do as well as his contract you would expect. So they kind of went 50-50 on free agent signings as well. So I don't know what's been going on. You don't see as many home run picks and home run signings from the Patriots as you did in years past. A lot of the reason for success in this defense and the team in general, obviously Brady, but then you saw guys like Chandler Jones, Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty, all these guys who were cornerstone players for the Patriots for years of this defense, and then getting guys like Malcolm Butler undrafted and Jonathan Jones and guys like that. Signing guys like Stephon Gilmore, Darrelle Revis. There's I feel like we're seeing less and less of that of the draft. Like, is there, besides if you take away last year's draft, is there anybody that you feel like this guy's going to be the next Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, Chandler, like any of those guys that we've drafted? Like, Winovich is already gone. Uche, I don't think we feel confident he's going to be anything special like that. He has potential, but he can't set the edge to save his life. I don't see a lot of guys like that. And you got to have players like that, like the Chargers. I know we keep talking about the Chargers, but they're doing a great job. Derwin James, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler. They got all these guys in the draft, and that's what their team is made of right now.
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking up a stat. Okay, sorry, here it is. So we're talking about the draft and stuff, and sorry, I saw this one. Pierre Strong is a baller with serious fumbles issue. He better work on that. Yeah, he had 4 fumbles last year. He had 0 the previous year, 2 after that, 0 in that. So 6 fumbles on almost 627 carries. So 1% of his carries. So I think with the way Bill Belichick teaches ball handling, they'll have that fixed. That won't be a problem.
Ramondre had fumbling issues early too.
Yeah, that I have no worries about that. The other thing I was pulling up right here is since 2010, I get it, guys. I think the previous draft classes people have, the 2019 one was historically bad. But since 2010, these are New England's first round picks. Devin McCourty, Nate Solder, Chandler Jones, Dante Hightower, Dominique Easley. Yeah, that was a little bit interesting. Malcolm Brown played significant for us. I mean, he was here. We didn't have him for long, but I would say he was a good player. No picks in 16, 17. Isaiah Wynn started 5 years for us. I know people are down on him, but anytime you get a 5-year starter, name many teams that get a 5-year offensive tackle starter on their rookie deal. I'm sorry. I get it. Some people are down.
How many, like, percentage of snaps? How much did he play? he wasn't available much, and when he was available, he was solid. But if the fourth year he wasn't good, this year we'll see how he is. It's just like that's why we were in the middle of those in the 2010s. We had that kind of run of Super Bowls is because we set ourselves up good from 2010 to 2014 ish with the draft. But if you go from like 2015 on, there's a lot of Sony Michel, Isaiah Wynn. I know we're drafting later in the first round, but you just don't see a lot of contributors like you see in some of these other teams. And are we the worst drafting team in the NFL? No, I'm not saying that. But are there more teams ahead of us than behind us? Probably. I would say, yeah. I'd say we're in the back half, back third of the NFL in drafting consistently. You could argue, like I just said, that's because we have a later pick, but I feel like there's been a lot of better options for this team, and they're just not doing a good enough job of sustaining consistent drafting, especially in these early rounds. Like, great, you can get a guy undrafted, you can find a gem, great. How about we hit on these first round picks that should be slam dunks most of the time? I don't know. We took Sony Michel. There was Nick Chubb. There's been a lot of different things. We took Isaiah Wynn over Calvin Ridley. I don't know. It just has felt like a lot of really average drafts. And in order to have sustained success in the NFL, you have to hit home runs on some of these picks. Everyone? No, but you got to hit some. And we just haven't been hitting enough. We've been hitting a lot of singles, a lot of safe picks that are average first round draft picks. Would you, okay, say Isaiah Wynn was on a different team right now. Would you give up a first round pick for him?
No, but most of the time you don't trade a first round pick straight across the board for a first round pick.
Okay,
4 years earlier.
So right now in this situation, Isaiah Wynn, you know everything you know about him right now. Would you spend this next year's first round pick on him?
No, but I think that's unfair because he was great coming out of college. Like I was excited when they took him. I was excited as heck when they took him. I thought he was going to be more of a guard because of his size, and I think he played some. I think he just profiled there better. But I'm not down. I'm not down as bad on Isaiah Wynn. His health has been a problem, but when he's been on the field, he's been solid. He's better than I would say.
I will say this year was his worst year.
20s teams starting left tackles. I would take him over probably 20, or no, sorry. I would take him over probably half of the league starting left tackles right now. Like if you were to look at that, that's how I would. I really do. I think when he's on the field, he is a good player. He's athletic. That's why I liked him at guard. He can move. It's just his injuries have hindered him. So that's my thoughts on Isaiah Wynn. But
if you take out this past season, I feel a lot better about Isaiah Wynn because we were saying, okay, if Isaiah Wynn stays healthy, he's really solid, and that was just a big problem. But last year he was garbage. He was not good enough at all. And if he has a year like last year again, he's gone, and he shouldn't be worth the $10 million we're going to pay him this year. I don't know. It's not. I'm not saying that he didn't look solid out of college. I'm saying everybody can say, oh, this guy looked good in college, but he didn't turn out in the NFL. That's what I'm saying. That's what the draft is projecting these guys to the NFL. They haven't been great at doing that. They haven't been great at finding a role for these guys or telling who's going to fit in their system early on. They've spent so many third round picks or second round picks on these edge players that just never end up playing. Like, I don't know. We just Chase Winovich, Josh Uche, Perkins didn't play last year. We'll see how he does this year. There's just Anthony Jennings played linebacker some his first year, then he didn't play last year. It's just, I don't know. There's just, it feels like a lack of consistency throughout the draft of getting these really good players when there's so many great young players that come out of the draft every year. And it is a crapshoot. Not every team hits home runs every pick. Obviously it's a mess, but a lot more teams pick more double, triples, home runs than we do. And we're towards the back end of the league. I feel like the back third, back half of the league at the very worst. I mean, do you think we're a top 16 team drafting?
In the first round? No. As a whole, yes. Because that was going to be my next point is Bill Belichick, for people that say he can't draft, maybe on day one, he's had some questionable picks. We'll see how Cole Strange turns out. Like I said, if you look at the last 10 years, or from 2010 on, McCourty worked, Solder worked, Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower worked. Malcolm Brown, I think was a good player. He didn't stay with us long enough. Isaiah Wynn, probably one of I wouldn't put him as our best one. for sure. Sony Michel helped us win a Super Bowl. N'Keal Harry, total bust. Mac Jones looks good, and we'll see how Cole Strange does. But here's my point. In 2020, when we didn't have a pick, we go get Kyle Duggar. Josh Uche has all the potential. So I think Bill Belichick does such a good job drafting in the later rounds. Now, that's where I agree with you that it sucks because you got to hit on first-round talent. And we haven't done that nearly as often as what we were doing it in the 2010s when we were winning, Super Bowls every other year, getting to AFC championships a lot. So I agree with you. I'm not saying that New England's been perfect at drafting, but Bill has had such a good, Owenu, trading down for Kyle Duggar. How many people bagged on Kyle Duggar and look at him now? He might be an all-pro or a Pro Bowl safety soon. Like the dude, no one wants to, I said this last time, no one wants to do what Bill does. Bill's approach is, I don't give a shit what the NFL or the media thinks. I'm going to take who I want. And that either bites him in the ass or it turns out really good for him. So I don't blame him. He has the old school approach, which I think is what Patriots fans are not liking right now, is they see all these teams going modern and they're, getting all this, and they're, becoming 5 wide on offense, and Bill's sticking to it. And I agree, there needs to be some adaptation for the Patriots, but I don't see Bill straying too far off of what has gotten him 6 Super Bowls, and it's going to be hard to get another one without Tom Brady, without adjusting the team. That's why I think he needs to move it a little. But I think it's unfair to just say New England has been absolutely crap in the draft for the last 4 years, because there's been some really good guys. Now, maybe they're closer to 50% on their hit percentage on these draft picks, especially in the first round. But I think that New England has been better than what a lot of people want to give them credit for. They just want to look at the N'Keal Harrys. They want to maturely judge Cole Strange and all these reaches that people are saying were reaches. So that's how I see it. I think that this year will be telling on how Bill Belichick drafts. And I think we both agree that maybe it would benefit New England if they had a true GM and it wasn't just Matt Goff and Bill Belichick coming in and, saying, blah, 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 we'll take this Division II guy. So that's kind of my approach there. But I don't think he's been as bad as Patriots fans want to say he was.
He's been better in the later half of the draft than some teams. But I think it's pretty fair to say let's go over first 3 rounds is fair.
Yeah.
First 3 rounds of the first 2 days. Have a pretty good hit rate on the first 2 days of the draft, right? So from just 2015 on, like we talked about, 2015, Malcolm Brown, Jordan Richards, Geno Grissom. How many of those would you say were worth first, second, and third round pick?
I would say Malcolm Brown, he was the 32nd pick. I would give him a good pick. Now, sorry, I didn't get to this. Bill's philosophy with once you get off your rookie deal, what does he do? He gets rid of you and he finds a replacement. So maybe that's the other thing that Patriots fans aren't thinking into is Malcolm Brown played with us and then he's just gone.
I think that's if you're not a good pick, though. He doesn't let the guys who are good first-round picks get away. I mean,
what do you do with Chandler Jones? Traded him.
Yeah. Dante Hightower.
What do you do with Nate Solder?
Devin McCourty, Rob Gronkowski.
What did he do with Nate Solder, though? Nate Solder, but Nate Solder, he did the exact same thing as what he just did with Shaq Mason. So I don't know. I get what you're saying.
Traded him later, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you hit on a first-round pick and he's going to be a cornerstone of your team, if Belichick doesn't care about spending money if it's on the right guy. If he can get value for a player that he feels like is worth it, obviously he's going to do it. But, I mean,
who's the right guy, though? We found J.C. Jackson undrafted and we don't even pay him. How is that not the right guy? Like that?
There's a lot of J.C. Jackson has his concerns within if nobody else is willing to give him $15 million a year, you don't think other teams had the same concerns Belichick's did? The only team willing to pay him that type of money was the Chargers. That was it. That was all we heard about was the Chargers the whole time, which is crazy for us because we look at him and we say his production shows he's a top 5 corner, but overall teams had more concerns about him than the Patriots, or that the Patriots included. You go from that 2015, 2016, Cyrus Jones, Joe Thuney, great pick. Jacoby Brissett, Vincent Valentine. So you had 1 out of 4 there. 2017 doesn't really count. Derek Rivers.
So there's my point. What does he do with Joe Thuney? We find him in the 3rd round. What do? They let him walk. Like, why isn't he re-signing these late round picks to deals that he deserves? Joe Thuney deserved every single penny he got.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Who was 17?
17, Derek Rivers, Antonio Garcia.
Okay.
We only had 2, and they were both third round picks, so I
Yep.
won't really hold them to that. That draft was crap. Dietrich Wise was in there, but that was
Yeah.
we only had 4 picks that year. 2018, Isaiah Wynn, Sony Michel, Duke Dawson, in the first 2 rounds. Those are our picks right there.
So Duke Dawson sucked. I already had my case on Isaiah Wynn. Sony Michel helped us win a Super Bowl, and Bill trades him because everyone trades running backs, right? I mean, Bill, the running back thing for New England, you're telling me you take Sony Michel over Damian Harris or Ramondre or even Pierre Strong in this case? No. New England did. Then that's the thing is
that's what I'm saying though.
I
Is
didn't like
they
the
could take a
running
running
back.
back.
I didn't like that pick, but he contributed to a Super Bowl. So
they've had so much success drafting a running back in the 3rd, 4th round the past few years that you don't need to spend a first round pick, especially if you're going to spend a first round pick. You got Nick Chubb right there as well, who a lot of people liked quite a bit. Isaiah Wynn at 23, I don't know. You're not seeing a lot of home runs who you're like, oh, this guy is a Patriot for life. 2019, N'Keal Harry, Jawan Williams, Chase Winovich, Damian Harris, great pick. Yadni Kajust, Ajay Froholt, Stidham, Byron Cowart, Jake Bailey, Ken Webster. There are 2 good picks there out of the entire thing.
Yeah. 2019 was historically
that's unacceptable.
bad.
Let's go to 2020. Kyle Duggar,
yep,
great pick. Josh Uche,
yet to see, undetermined.
Second round pick. How many snaps has he played so far in his 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah.
Not a lot. He's on the field for third down, passing down strictly because he is a liability in the run game. They never trust him. He's never on the field. Anthony Jennings hardly played or played his first year, didn't play at all the second year because he wasn't in shape enough. They didn't let him play the entire season. They put him on whatever list it was. Devin Asiasi, how's that going? Dalton Keene, how's that going? Justin Rohrwasser, when we have like 3 other kickers that were like locks to be ahead of him who are playing in the NFL right now doing very well. I don't know where Rohrwasser is. Mike Onwenu, great pick. Haran in the 6th round, I'd say Haran's a good pick.
Yeah. Haran's what Austin Stewart could be this year. Or Chasen Hines. Like,
yep,
they can come in and they're not going to be otherworldly offensive linemen, but they can get you through a game, and there's going to be good and bad. I mean, that's why you're a 6th or 7th round pick, is because you're inconsistent.
Yeah. But you talk about just those first 3 rounds. Duggar, great pick. Uche, Jennings, Asiasi, Keene. I think you got one, maybe you could say 1.5 good players there if you want to give Uche and Jennings the question mark. But and then last year, Mac Jones, home run, Barmore, home run, Perkins, we don't know yet. Stevenson, great. McGrone, exciting. Bledsoe, we'll see. Sherman, Trey Nixon, we'll see. Last year was the best draft we've had in
4 years,
at least a long time. Last year was the best draft we've had in a long time. And then we go back this year, we have no idea what these guys are going to be yet, just because we haven't seen them. But I'm just saying, first 3 to 4 rounds of the draft, the Patriots have had such a low success rate compared to some of these other teams where they have to make up for it undrafted and in the late rounds. And you can't rely on that. They have to be better picking. If you're going to be dog shit at picking players in the first 3 rounds, don't be so stingy with those picks. Trade them for a player who you know is going to contribute and is going to be good. If you're going to waste your pick on somebody who's not going to be great, obviously they aren't thinking he's going to be shit before they draft him, but you got to have better awareness of what these players are, how they're going to translate. It's your job. That's what you do. That you're strictly Matt Groh right now is strictly a player personnel guy focusing on recruiting these guys out of college, seeing how, like, knowing how they're going to translate to the NFL. These are all things that this is their title in the NFL. You're at the top of the world in football, whatever you want to say. I don't know. There's been a lot of not great picks in the first 3 rounds where we just saw the Eagles trade a first round pick for AJ Brown. We've seen a lot of other teams throw these picks for wide receivers and different star players that, hey, if you're not going to use these picks on players you think are going to contribute, trade them, because you can get players who you know are going to contribute to your system. I don't get it. But then you trade a second for Mohamed Sanu, but you won't trade a second for Calvin Ridley or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks with how this team handles certain situations. And yes, you can say they're good at drafting late because they are. Later in the draft, they're better than most teams, I would say. But in the first 3 rounds, they're definitely in the back half.
If Bill hits on, I really do. I'm still questioning Cole Strange's value. I really think he's going to be a great player for us. I believe in Cole Strange. I think that Cole Strange will turn out if Tyquan Thornton, if they can at least use him in the right way. That's what worries me is we haven't seen New England use a receiver like him in forever. So if they can use him right, I think New England always hits on the running backs. So I think Pierre Strong or Kevin Harris will do good. I think the corners are going to have an immediate impact. We know Marcus Jones can do it all. I mean, he's a special teams ace, which we know Bill loves. So I think that this draft class could make or break everyone's thoughts on what it is, because I agree there's good picks. Kyle Duggar, great pick. I mean, no one else probably would have reached up and taken him where Bill does. Bill takes him there. Now no one's questioning that right now. So I don't know. I think that this year is going to make or break the Bill Belichick drafting philosophy, and we'll see. And honestly, I don't care if Cole Strange is a first round pick in 2 years if he's an all pro guy like Joe Tooney or something. I don't care if he was tagged to reach. People said Russell Wilson sucked at pick 91 when Seattle took him, and he led him to 2 straight Super Bowls and won one of them and was dang close on winning a second one. So the post draft grades, we never know. And like I said, we'll see in 2 years, maybe even a year, where these guys are at and stuff. I mean, a lot of people would have said after year 1, Sony Michel was a home run pick, where he leads us to a Super Bowl. Well, it doesn't lead us, but he was a big contributor in the Super Bowl, scores the only touchdown in Super Bowl. What was that? 51, Super Bowl 50 or Super Bowl 53, scores the only touchdown there. And so people would have said that. And then 3 years later, we trade him for a 5th or a 6th round pick. So I don't know. I get the talk, the concern of Bill Belichick, but I don't know. We'll see how all this draft talk turns out. And I'm not saying that Bill is the best drafter, because I would definitely agree 100% if New England went out today and signed a straight GM and said, hey, you're the GM. No one else is going to step in front of you. That's what I think New England needs. That's where Bill Belichick has too much on his plate. They'll never get it, but that's where Bill Belichick has too much on his plate.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
It's who you may have left on the board at 21 and 29, though. But that's the thing, though, is we don't know that, right? Andrew Booth slid for a reason, right? Everyone wanted Andrew Booth at 21 or 29. Realistically, New England could have traded up and taken him when he got taken, but there's obviously legitimate concerns. There's legitimate concerns about Nakobe Dean. That's the other thing is everyone's tagging Cole Strange as a reach. How do we know that Andrew Booth doesn't just flop in the league? We've seen many second-round cornerbacks flop. How do we know that some of these guys that we wanted weren't going to flop just as hard as people say Cole Strange is? So that's why we need to wait a year and say, oh, yeah, well, if we would have taken Karlaftis at 29, or sorry, Karlaftis or someone, if we would have taken one of those guys over Cole Strange, then we'll see in a year if it really makes sense, if he goes out and has a great year, defensive rookie of the year or whatever. So we'll see how all these guys turn out. It's not fair to say we should have taken so-and-so, because we don't know if that guy's not going to be a bust, or if he's not going to be if he would have been worth it at 29 either. So, and
I agree with what you're saying. Especially for this year. I'm not ready to say any of these guys are busts. You can't say that before you see him step on an NFL field. We don't know that. We don't know what these guys are yet. So this year, take that out of the equation. But in general, I think what people are saying, when he says at 21 and 29, who you left on the board, take that out of this draft and put that into every other draft. Yeah, when they drafted, they didn't know what this player was going to be. They didn't know Nick Chubb was going to be way better than Sony Michel. They didn't know that Calvin Ridley was going to be a superstar wide receiver and Isaiah Wynn was going to be a solid tackle. But that's your job. Your job is to evaluate these players and have a good understanding of how they're going to translate for the most part. It's not a perfect science, but this is what you're getting paid millions of dollars to do in the NFL, is to run these teams and to understand how they translate from the college level to the NFL level. And I think what a lot of people are saying is the Patriots in general don't have a great understanding of how these top prospects translate from college to the NFL. And they don't understand the value of, oh, this guy's going to end up being this, and this guy's going to end up being this. We're going to take this guy and then this guy ends up being worse than who they could have taken. Um, it's just, yeah, obviously nobody knows how these guys are going to turn out, but it's your job to evaluate them and to have an understanding for the most part. You should hit on more picks than you miss, especially in the first 2 to 3 rounds, is what I'm saying. Like overall, you miss at a 6th and a 7th round pick, who cares? But you miss on a 1st or 2nd round pick, you can't be doing that consistently because that's just not going to set you up for success.
It's hard. This is why being a NFL scout is so hard, because you're projecting how guys are going to turn out. You see them in college, but now you're talking about what? 2% of college players, 260 something players a year getting drafted, and then other ones getting signed to practice squads. You're talking about the top 2% of football players in the world, and you're trying to project them what they're going to be in 2 or 3 years. That's why it's so hard, because Isaiah Wynn played 800 snaps in 2015 and 16 and 900 in 2017. No injury problems. And what has he been in the NFL? That's kind of the other thing I'm saying too, is like, yes, everyone has there's potential in all these guys, but you don't know injuries. You don't know, you can know off field issues.
Injuries.
You can't
injuries
project the future 100%. If you could, then everyone would be good in the draft. But that's what makes the NFL so hard. And that's where I do agree with you. You have to be good at your job. And you have to be, I think that if you're a great scout, you should be hitting on 70, maybe 75% of the players that you suggest or that you draft. But it's
especially
so hard.
Early. Just that's the thing. Like rounds
It's
1
so
to
hard
3.
to project, though. It's so hard to project someone 2 years. I deal with this all the time in college football too. Scouting a high school kid, you're like, oh, he has the frame. Heck, I have size 14 feet. And they told me I was going to be like 6'3", and I'm 5'11". So if a college guy would have offered me when I was a sophomore and they told me I'd be 6'3", and then I don't grow and I stay at 5'11", they wouldn't want me. So it's so hard to project. There's all these what ifs. Well, what if this guy? What if? So I agree. And in some essence, you're just throwing a dart at a dartboard and you're hoping. But then there is a lot of homework on the back end. Like, hey, this guy's more athletic. He's got better speed. He's got better tape. I like this attribute over that attribute. So I'm not disagreeing with you on anything. I'm just saying it's super hard to project guys 3, 4, 5 years in the NFL.
Yeah. I had size 11 and a half feet in like 6th and 7th grade. And now I'm a size 12 and I'm 5'11". So it's like,
Every year I was like, I would turn 11. I get new shoes in 11. I turn 12. So I'm like going into 8th, 9th grade there. Like you could probably be like 6'3". And I'm like, oh yes, dude, I'm gonna play Division I football, which I did, but I wasn't on scholarship, and now I'm coaching and stuff. But freaking, I didn't grow to 6'3". I'm still 5'11". I'm like, what the crap is this? Like, they projected me to be this, but that happens a lot in the NFL. And when you're dealing with a lot of 21, 22-year-olds, so most of their bodies are fully developed, and you can tell that stuff. It's a bad comparison, but it's kind of what I'm saying. How it's super hard. No one can project injuries. You can say they have an injury history, but you can't say a fully healthy guy is going to tear his Achilles. No one knew Tyreek Cohen it was going to have all this injury history. I mean, prayers up to him, but no one knows all this stuff. So,
yeah, I agree. And injury is a different thing. Like if somebody's a bust because he just tore his ACL 3 times, you got unlucky, that's a different thing. But I'm just saying, healthy players, not hitting on them enough. I mean, Jawan Williams is not going to be on this roster probably come week 1. And we just used a 2nd round pick on him a couple years ago. N'Keal Harry, our 1st round pick, he's going to be off the roster. It's just, I don't know. It's unfortunate. Sony Michel, gone. Isaiah Wynn's going to be gone next year. There's just so many of these 1st and 2nd round picks we don't hit on. And if we get value for him, it's a 7th round pick, which is like, okay, but we just use a 1st round pick on him. So I don't know. You can't be crap at drafting, have a bad success rate in the first 3 rounds, and be so stingy with your picks and not be willing to move them for players who are going to contribute or who you've seen at the NFL level. Because once you see them at the NFL level, it's a lot easier to project what they're going to be because you've seen it. So if you see a guy and you're like, this guy's going to work, I'm going to trade a 2nd round pick for him because I know how he's going to fit here for the most part. It's still not perfect, but I'm pretty positive how this guy's going to work in the system compared to, I have no idea what that guy's going to do over there in the draft. So I'm going to use my 2nd round pick and trade for this player and get something for sure instead of use this 2nd round pick on a guy that I'm not really sure about. Like, I'm not saying do that every year. You can't because the money you need to use the draft to get guys for cheap for a long term. But once in a while, trade a 2nd or 3rd round pick for a guy who thinks going to contribute to your team because these 2nd and 3rd round picks aren't often doing that for you.
Yeah. This is really the last thing I have, unless you have anything else.
Yep.
But the situation and system also affects how a player turns out. The Steelers and receivers are the best example of this. Look at their history drafting late round receivers and turning them into great contributors. I always wonder. Bill has a great track record of finding undrafted corners, but we have seen so many misses on second and third round corners. So what is that with Bill? Is he valuing something over another trait in these guys, and that's the determining factor? Juwan Williams, we talked about this too during the draft show. He has great length, but he doesn't have the hip fluidity, the foot speed, any of that stuff. So what's he valuing there? Duke Dawson, there's another example. But with the Steelers, it's like, are they bringing these guys in, and are they just better at developing these guys in their system than New England is? I mean, I agree. Someone said that Nikhil was a lot of people's number 2, number 3 receivers. He tore it up in the Pac-12 and at Arizona State. I'd be interesting if you go back in time, put him on the Steelers, put him on one of these teams that has had a good record of drafting receivers. And I'm not saying he'd be good, but I would just like to see how teams develop players more. Maybe we're not talking about the players being bust. Maybe there's a legitimate developmental issue in the Patriots system with some of these top round picks, and what we're talking about, an evaluation thing. So I don't think it's always on the player. And this is, in my opinion, lumped into a whole. It goes on the scout, the evaluation, the coaches that are developing them, the player, if he's putting in the work. So I agree. There's all these different factors, and we'll never know why N'Keal Harry was a bust or why Isaiah Wynn has all these injury history. But I do agree with you there. That's why you have to be good at your job. And that's why when you're projecting guys 2 or 3 years down the road, you need to say, not only is he going to be a good player, is he going to be a good player in our scheme? Because if you guys haven't watched the Pierre Strong video I just put out there, I encourage you to go watch it. One, because it has good film, but 2, Pierre Strong and Cole Strange both are coming from zone running schemes, where New England ran like 300 plus gap scheme runs to only 70 zone runs last year. So is there going to be a philosophy change, or does New England feel that confident that they can adjust to a gap scheme type of run system? So maybe that's a telltale sign that New England's going to switch to a little different run scheme on offense, or they're projecting them to come in and be good at a gap scheme and be able to mix in some zone scheme. So that's the other thing too, is you can't just look at the player like, oh, he was a bust. Like, how is his scheme fit too? Because there's a lot of different schemes out there, and some guys just thrive in different systems. And New England is one of the most complicated to learn offensively and defensively. Some people can't handle that mentally. So that's something to look at when we're looking at these players also.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't know what's more concerning, having guys who can't evaluate talent from the draft and put them on your team, or guys who can't develop the talent that you get on your team.
It's both a problem.
It's both a horrible issue that is extremely concerning for the future of this team. So yep. I don't know. It's concerning. It's a little bit concerning, and we've seen it in the past few years or whatever with some of these things, and especially wide receivers. Like, it seems like unless you're a slot receiver or unless you're a converted quarterback coming to being a wide receiver, it's scary hours for for Patriots wide receivers. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Let's see.
For sure, yeah. Answer this comment. Yeah, you guys planning on sticking this out? Yeah, we started this last year. What, like we didn't come on to YouTube did we come on week? Oh, we came on week 1,
preseason,
right?
Preseason.
So we originally
our first
started
video on YouTube was after the first preseason game against Washington.
Yeah, so we originally started on Riverside FM, and we were just doing podcasts, but we flipped over to YouTube. Now we're doing live streams, and we're trying to put out at least 1, possibly 2 clips. So we're sticking this out. Our plan during the season is just like last year. And if you guys weren't here, subscribe, because we do a pregame show on Wednesdays where we go into the full details. We have over under picks, do a little game there. We have spread line picks for different NFL games, not just the Patriots. We discuss the opponent they're playing, predictions. We do everything on the pregame show. Then we're always live after the game, whether that's Sunday night, Monday night, with our instant reactions to the game, who played good, who played bad. So yeah, we're planning on sticking this one out. And we have a couple other projects that we're been talking about, possibly a website, writing articles and stuff. But yeah, if you guys want Patriots talking stuff, this is the place to subscribe.
Yes, for sure. Subscribe if you haven't already. I think we're about to hit 700 subscribers, so trying to get to that 1,000 mark, that'd be huge. But hitting 700 would be great. I mean, just just 6 months ago, we were not even at 100 probably. So it's been great growth. It's been a lot of great support from you guys. Obviously, it's a slow time right now, and we're trying to come up with topics for you guys and touch on things you want to see. So if you guys have ideas for videos you want to see, please drop them in the comments. Please shoot it our way. DM us on Instagram, whatever you want to do. Our Instagrams are right there next to our names. So follow us there. Subscribe here. We're gonna, like Jay said, continue to come out with, once there's more content, two videos, 2 lives, or a live and a couple clips all throughout the season. So we appreciate the support from all you guys, all the new guys. Boston Sports Talk, first time I've seen him in here. So appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully you guys continue to support. So that's all I got. Jace, you got anything else?
Yeah, for sure. Light Shadows, all the guys that have been in here the whole time. We appreciate you guys. The whole hour and 20, or if you were in here an hour and 10, an hour, we don't care, right? We appreciate you guys commenting, liking, subscribing. I mean, you guys really run this podcast. If we're on here talking to no one and it's getting out to no one, then we feel dumb, and it does no good. So we love having you guys come on here, talking to you guys, answering your questions, and putting out content for you guys, and then just enjoying Patriots football like we all love. Hopefully we did have a Bears fan come in here one time, and he just tried trash talking us, but I think
it was funny though. It was fun little banter back and forth.
Yes. So, but no, that we appreciate you guys being on here, especially during the slow time. We had a ton of viewers during the draft process, but I understand that why they're not here. I mean, this is one of the slow times in the NFL, but if you guys are here right now, you're a real one. So we appreciate you guys. For sure. Yep.
Carlos too. A couple good ideas here. Win-loss over like record predictions, and then final roster predictions further down the road. That'd be good. So a couple ideas there. Perfect. We can we'll figure it out. We'll try to get some fresh content out for you guys. Hopefully things are starting to pick up, and we'll get some videos of players, some reports on how players are doing, adapting the system and all that stuff. Usually in the next few weeks we start to get some stuff coming out. So that's all I got. Anything else? Y'all set?
That's it. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
Yeah, thanks you guys for the support. Maybe another film review. Jace might be doing another film review this week, so look out for that. And then hopefully live next week. Hopefully got more content for you guys, and then maybe next week we can drop some more clips if we get some good content. So appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button, all that good stuff. Spread the word. We appreciate all the support, and we will talk to you guys later.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Patriots Drive podcast. Follow us on social media to stay up to date with all things New England Patriots. Make sure you tune in to the next episode and check out patriotsdrive.com for more great content.
We're on to Cincinnati.